Well, good afternoon. My name is Chris King. I'm with Salesforce.com, and joining me today is Sean Jean from Avaya. We're going to spend probably about the next 45 minutes or so running through some slides, and then leave about the last 10-15 minutes for Q&A. I'm Vice President of our consulting organization, so it was my team that worked with Sean and the Accenture team on the implementation that he's going to tell you about at Avaya, where they implemented our global PRM solution. But before we do that, no session would be complete unless we flashed up the safe harbor statement. So there it is. I'm not going to go into much detail as Mark did this morning. You can read it yourself on your website. But here's where we're going to spend our time. So I want to share with you kind of our points of view on some stuff as it relates to how do you organize and implement an enterprise scale on the cloud? How is it different from what you may be used to from the on-premise world? I've been at Salesforce for a little over 4 years. Prior to that, I spent 9 years at a fairly large on-premise provider, so it's definitely a different way of thinking in terms of how you execute and organize yourself to go fast. So we'll share with you kind of our point of view around that. We're going to talk about how you go fast with quality. So, kind of, it's one thing to go really fast. It's another thing to go fast but actually deliver quality to your end users and not just kind of jam something and get something out the door that doesn't provide value. And then talk a little bit about planning and organizing from a project standpoint, from an end user standpoint, kind of how you'll make that happen. I'm only going to be about 10-15 minutes. I'll try and go through my stuff fairly quickly and leave the majority of the time so Sean can really tell you about the Avaya story and talk to you about how they've rolled out thousands of users in a fairly short period of time, how they did the Siebel to Salesforce migration, kind of how they went through their planning and strategy around that, and share with you a really good success story. So let's jump into it. So really it comes down to kind of 4 things. This isn't going to be anything new, but these are kind of the way we view what you want to be considering, and it is all around the people, the process, the technology, and also the support and operations. And the last one may be the one that's slightly different. Everybody always kind of thinks about people, process, and technology, but support and operations is actually also vastly different in the cloud world, and we'll touch on that. So what's different with the people? Well, what you're going to find, if you haven't found it already, is you're able to do a lot more with a lot less, right? So typically, in this environment, your team structure sizes are probably in that 3 to 5 category. As I mentioned, I've been here for 4 years. I'm on the implementation consulting side, and our teams are in that 3 to 5 range consistently across projects. Some are a little bit more, some a little bit less, but that's basically about right. In the non-cloud world, those numbers are probably not numbers that you're probably used to. So you're doing more with less. You're also able to actually have business have a lot of more ownership over things that were traditionally IT activities. So things like being able to create their own reports and dashboards. So no longer do you need to kind of define your reports and submit it into some queue in IT where it sits for days and potentially weeks, and then hopefully you get a report out the other side. You actually have the business owners take responsibility for that. Things like end user administration, right? So the kind of basic stuff that you again, putting in requests to IT, waiting for IT to execute on those types of things. So there's a number of business responsibilities there that you're able to shift. And that really allows IT to do a couple of things. It really allows them to focus on what they're going to be able to build to add value for the end users, right? So they're not worried about adding users to the app. They're not worried about building email templates or doing reports and dashboards. They're worrying about the heavy lifting, right? They're worrying about building out those custom objects and the workflow rules and those things that you're really building into the app that are adding value. That's where IT is focused. And they were able to execute them through kind of a different type of release strategy. So what we often talk about is the notion of minor and major releases. So what Sean will talk to you in a little bit while is after you kind of get initially out the door, you can kind of get into this nice little cadence where you're able to deliver, hopefully, value to users on a fairly regular basis. Maybe it's a monthly release cycle where you're kind of rolling out some kind of minor enhancements, updates to page layouts, things of that nature. And then you're cycling in some major releases where you're really adding net new functionality. Maybe you're incorporating the Service Cloud where you've rolled out the Sales Cloud previously, or you're adding forecasting, or, again, significant types of functionality. But, again, that's where the IT organization's focus allows the business community to kind of focus on those non-IT responsibilities. From a process standpoint, really what we're seeing is this notion of moving to kind of an agile methodology. It may be a term that you're familiar with. And this notion of really looking at operating and executing in what's measured in weeks and not months, right? And so, again, Sean will talk to you about the kind of process that they executed through, where as they looked at their different release cycles, they were really looking at things in measured in weeks, and really looking at understanding what their business priorities were, how they lined that up against having the team kind of meet almost on a daily basis to kind of structure out what kind of work was going to get executed, and then running through that so that every 2 to 4 weeks they were actually delivering something to the end users. Not necessarily in production, right, but because you've got access, you're in the cloud, and you can kind of roll things out to end users, let them touch it and feel it. You're not kind of going off for months on end and then kind of showing up and delivering something, taking the bow off, and kind of going from that standpoint. So what does that really lead to? Kind of this iterative approach leads to the things that we're showing here on the right. So you've got these shorter cycles. Again, you're delivering stuff in weeks and not months. You're getting what's a big deal for us is the whole notion of faster time to value. So you may have, if you've attended other sessions, you may have heard people talk about one of the things that Salesforce is very focused on is the whole time to value perspective. So how do you go from initial subscription purchase to getting users live, right, as quickly as possible, so that notion of delivering time to value. We believe it provides a much higher ability to be flexible and to be responsive to your end users. So again, because you're able to deliver in days and weeks, you can kind of take input in, you can quickly iterate on things, roll something out to the end users, and allows them to have some really good influence over what features and functions get prioritized for them. Because at the end of the day, you want to deliver something into their hands that's going to add value so that it drives adoption. This isn't about an IT exercise. This is about adding value to your end users. And so having them participate in that process of what features get prioritized, when do you deliver those features, that's really key to this methodology. And all that we believe leads to a lower risk and a higher predictability for how you're going to get this thing rolled out. So what's different from a process standpoint? Well, we're seeing more and more that this isn't the first time that folks are implementing CRM or PRM or SFA or Service Cloud even, and they're really using it as an opportunity to simplify their processes. So they're kind of looking at their current implementations and they're saying, geez, this thing's, it's either very mature and therefore it's fairly complicated, or it hasn't had the high level of adoption that they had hoped. And a lot of it revolves around the process, right, and this overcomplication of process. So they're using this as an opportunity to really simplify how they're deploying. And they're doing that, again, through that iterative and rapid deployment approach. They're really looking at, and Sean is really going to cover this from an Avaya standpoint, how they transform their processes, right? So how they look at their different business processes, whether it's related to service, whereas Sean's going to talk about PRM, and how they really transform the way of thinking and the way of executing and leveraging the cloud technology to allow them to do that. And that's supported by this notion of focusing on a strategic roadmap. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the strategic roadmap. There are kind of other sessions that discuss that. But just at a high level, it's really the notion of basically looking at your businesses across the different priorities that you may have in the different user constituencies, and really lining that up against coming back to this business value. What are your key metrics and your key success values that you're going to drive? So whether that's increased revenue or focus on adoption or process simplification, and there's a number of different metrics, and then kind of lining that up against the overall strategic roadmap for how you're going to go and execute. Last but certainly not least, again, as I think you'll see from Sean, and you've probably seen from a couple other customers, you really do achieve faster return on investment, again, this notion of time to value, and you're doing it at a lower risk. So what's different in the cloud from a technology standpoint? So, traditionally, you've had to make some trade-offs, right? You've kind of had this notion of this very powerful but fairly complicated on-premise world, or you've got this choice of these kind of shared generic apps here down at the bottom, and you really couldn't, you kind of had to make a choice. You could kind of get that really good high functionality, high configuration through building out your custom apps in the on-premise world, or you could kind of, again, go with kind of this easier, low-cost kind of solution, but functionality was limited. You really didn't have that robust capability. Well, with the cloud technology, right, because of the programmable logic, because of things like internet scale and unlimited customizations and things like that, we really do believe that we provide in the cloud technology the best of both worlds, right? So we've kind of married the two together, and we've allowed you to do that, or the cloud allows you to do that fairly extensively and then kind of get that deployed fairly quickly. So from a support standpoint, again, it's kind of a similar theme as to what we touched on earlier with the business users and being able to kind of drive some of that process, if you will, out of the traditional support or IT organization and more into the hands of the business. And so you'll see that this notion of what we try and have, the notion of power users, right? So really having your front line, your first line support not be an IT help desk, right? Not be a call center, but really having it be your end users that are there to answer the daily questions, that are there to potentially help other users do things like build out list views or build reports or dashboards, even potentially do things like user administration, things of that nature. So kind of driving down from your traditional help desk area into the power users, into a regional organization. And then you kind of scale up to more of the traditional help desk, your Salesforce administrator, your Salesforce staff, and then ultimately into your premier support staff. So again, it's the notion of kind of pushing down that area of responsibility out to the business community. So when we talk about going fast with quality, it's really about a phased approach. It's really about kind of prioritizing, as this simple picture here shows at the bottom. And you can kind of think of, as you look at the scale, you got benefit and effort, how do you want to organize how you're going to go deliver features and functions? And so if you were to kind of layer features and functions, I'll just jump one slide ahead. It's kind of this notion of really looking at, and this is just a sample, right? Your mileage will vary depending on what you want to do, but this is actually from a customer that we did, and it really looked at how do you want to actually deploy this stuff over time. So one of the key takeaways from this slide is we're not delivering all features and functions at once, right? We're really looking at how do you kind of carve up, how do you deliver things like, hey, let's just do opportunity and pipeline management first. Then we'll add forecasting. Then we'll add account and contact management. Again, this may not work for you, but it worked for them, right? And by delivering value, by getting something in the hands of the end users, it may not have been everything they wanted day one, but it was kind of starting that drumbeat. It really started the whole adoption methodology and really got something in the hands of the users. We were able to get feedback, right? We were able to kind of look at how do we, as not only adding features and functions over time, but then as we're going through that, what other, I'll say, adjustments do we want to make to the application that we initially deployed? So as we look at planning and organizing, it's really this notion of center of excellence. I'm sure you've all heard this term before. And the difference here between what you may have traditionally understood with a center of excellence with what we're demonstrating here, again, is this notion of what capabilities can I actually push down to the business, right? And so this notion at the bottom where we're talking about having the business have some responsibilities around things like data integration or configuration and custom fields. This is something that, in the traditional non-cloud world is not something you would do, right? But in the cloud world, where I can kind of create this separation, and because if we go back a couple of slides, and it's clicks versus code, right? It's a little bit more straightforward. The ability to have the business take on some of those areas of responsibilities, and again, this may not work exactly for you and your organization, but as you'll hear from Sean, it does work for places like Avaya and other areas. You're able to let the COE kind of focus on those areas at the top and setting standards, right? Focusing on being an enabler, not an inhibitor, right? Oftentimes with COEs, they can kind of get really big and cumbersome and really kind of slow projects down. Well, we don't want to do that, right? We want to have them focus on more of the strategic areas and then work with the various lines of business in a parallel fashion to really kind of allow you to execute through a global implementation. So as I said, I took about a little less than 15 minutes. So I just want to run through my stuff really quick. I'm going to turn it over to Sean, who's really going to focus on kind of how some of that came to real life with what they've done at Avaya. You're up.
So sometimes I stutter a little. Hopefully I get everybody's attention because I've got something that I think's of value, right? So I was in the crowd last year and I was staring down the barrel of a pretty large deployment. And I'm going to show you a clip of actually my boss and the meeting that I had with him to kick this thing off. Made me cancel my vacation, made me very nervous, made me sweat a lot. So what I want to do is I kind of want to share what we planned, what we did, pretty quick. What I really want to focus on is what we learned and how we made deployment better. Because I think I'm going to be able to give you some nuggets that you can take away and bring back to your own deployments, either maintenance deployments or full-scale releases. And then I'm going to share with you our vision of Salesforce and where we're looking to go with it. So this is my boss, Sam, and he loves that I get this clip, and I threaten to put it on YouTube every once in a while. But I'm going to share with you what he basically said I needed to do within 6 months. I think he had a different tie on, but the message is very much the same. Did I get anybody with the stuttering thing? Did I get people? Did I get you, Bob? Good.
Avaya delivered key Salesforce.com functionality to 3,300 CRM users and 1,100 PRM users, all in 6 months. This was a task that had never been done by any other Salesforce.com customer and was critical for Avaya's success. This solution is now being prepared to scale up to 50,000 users.
3,300 users, a transformational strategy that was critical to Avaya's success. We're still executing on the strategy. We moved from very much a direct company to we needed to move to a very focused on our partner and our channel. And we needed PRM quickly. And it needed to be right. Had to be right. So to Chris's point, quick with quality, or whatever the term is, I mean, that's what I was being asked to do. I had this meeting, I literally, and this is a true story, I had gone into his office to tell him I was taking 2 weeks because I had accrued enough vacation to do that. And I literally walked out after he said basically what I needed to do and canceled my vacation because I thought, oh my God, how are we going to do this? So let's talk about what we did. Maybe. See, Salesforce Consulting. Thank you very much. That was. So again, so CRM, we were building, a pretty robust CRM foundation, and really the launching pad for our PRM or our channel, which actually, today, I'm standing here. We're in our 4th release. We're looking to launch in February a very robust partner channel that's focused and aligned with our overall strategy as a corporation. And it is literally the tip of the spear for Avaya. It is key. It is critical. And so this was the foundation, and we had to have the foresight, and we had to make sure that we were thinking not just about what we needed to do here and now, meaning 8 months ago, but how is this going to transcend into other moving parts that were in motion, our program? How are we going to interact with our partners? How is our pricing going to change? Because we also went through a radical pricing change. But basically what we did is what you see here. I won't bore you with the numbers. So what did we learn? As with anything, there's always a need for scope, block, and change control. More than ever when you're trying to do something on this scale in such a short amount of time. And I'm going to share with you something that I find extremely valuable, even today as we're rolling out our Release 4. We actually use Salesforce to deliver Salesforce. And I'm going to share that with you in a little bit, but it's phenomenal. It's an absolutely fantastic tool. And schedule. I mentioned that there were a lot of moving parts at Avaya because doing this in 6 months wasn't enough, so they sat around and they thought about some other stuff they could throw in the mix. So we've got kind of all these planes in the air, low on fuel, flying to the same runway at the same time. So we need to kind of think about how we're going to air traffic control those and make sure none crash, which is something that we knew, but I really had to really think about that, and I'm sure all your companies are the same. I mean, everybody's breakneck pace to keep competitive. So I'm sure there are other things going on with your company. My suggestion would be really think about those, really understand how they may or may not impact your particular project. Costs. So we pick partners. We used Salesforce Consulting Services, our partners, Accenture. I have to tell you that in our first release, I'm a big fan of never going with a one-trick pony. I wanted to see a couple different folks. So I actually had Accenture as a lead, and I shadowed a couple folks. And I got to tell you, one of the things that is critical, don't just look at the bottom line cost. You need to look at the value you're going to get, the output. The other thing that you have to do, and I can't stress this enough, you have to have trust. If you don't trust your SI, if your SI isn't on your team, truly on your team and a partner, you're going to have trouble. So we were fortunate. We had that. Not only did we have that from a partner perspective, from an SI perspective, but we had it with a business. We weren't 3 teams. We were one team with one goal. This is not a foot race. This isn't a sprint, a single-person event. This is a relay race. And you got to make sure that that person's ready to grab that baton, and you got to make sure the baton's long enough so that they don't drop it. And that's what we were able to do. And again, can't stress it enough. So inevitably, with scope control, or when you're trying to control scope and do change control, and you're executing a project like this, there's going to be things that happen that you haven't thought about. And guess what, guys? This happens a lot, right? So having a clear governance process and being able to really think about what you're doing before you do it helps, right? I mean, it happens. I'm sure we've all been there. What you can't, I don't know if you can see that, but the bottom actually says, do not touch the edges of this sign. Because they're sharp. It's a very useful sign. Oh, cool. Thanks. So release 1's behind us. We have release 2, 3, and now we're in the middle of 4. So we took those learnings. We took we took the key points from our release 1, and we really listened to ourselves and our community. We had a lot of hard meetings about what worked, what didn't work, how could we make this better. I'm thankful to say that our release 2, 3, and hopefully 4 are extremely. I'm trained this. You trained this? Yeah. This is a little. Didn't you know I was nervous?
You may start stuttering.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to be harder on you.
All right. Good deal. Am I doing something? So this is what we were doing after our first release. So from April to August, from August to October, and then October to, like I said, February 1. So I don't want to tell you what we did work. What I want to share with you, I'm in IT, so I'm a director of IT. Sales is my customer. So this is one of the key folks that I have to make happy. And I want her to share with you her perspective of what we did and how it delivered value to our releases.
We're rolling.
So one of the things that we did after our first release was to consider what we could do differently to ensure our success for subsequent releases. And so what we undertook was a conference room pilot approach, which meant that I could sit down as a business owner side by side with the development team and talk about what my requirements were. And that was really useful because then we could have an open dialogue and talk about what I was asking for. They could ask clarifying questions. And as they were doing that, they were actually starting to make some of the changes right into the environment. So I could actually see what I was asking for take life and ensure that my expectations were aligned with what they were about to deliver. And I think that was really helpful to ensure that they understood what we were asking for. Another concept that was brought to our methodology was the requirements tracking tool, which the team used to capture our requirements, develop a very fact-based level of effort estimate, and the fact that it was presented in a very easy to understand fashion. I could see it graphically. I could understand what new change requests I was asking for and what it would mean to the overall release. Meant that I could easily understand what the impact was and help to ensure that we were making very timely decisions to control the budget and the scope.
So how we made deployment better. There were two things that she mentioned, and I want to spend a little bit of time on those. One is what we call a conference room pilot approach. We also call it CRP session. And I always say keep the A out of the CRP session. The other thing is the Salesforce tool that we used that our partner actually brought to the table to help us really understand what was being asked. So let me back up. So there's a conference room pilot approach. I'll go through that in a little bit of detail. Then there's a tool. And what we found in Release 1, that we had a lot of people that had never used Salesforce. We had a lot of business people that we were asking to define the requirements of a tool that they may have never used. Right? They may have never seen it. So they understand their process. They're a subject matter expert in that particular area. But now they're being asked, hey, I know you know that area. Tell me how you want it to work in Salesforce. And they're like, well, I've never seen Salesforce. How am I supposed to do that? How can I do that in a quality way, quickly? So the conference room pilot approach, so the conference room pilot approach helped us kind of mitigate that by actually showing them the tool, sitting down, business and IT, shoulder to shoulder with the application up in front of them and the process next to it, and say, okay, here's the process, here's how it's going to look in the tool. Before we build it, this is basically what it's going to look like. So we have a pretty decent idea. To Chris's point, it's different in SaaS. This is very quick. This is a very fast development cycle. And we were fortunate to be able to sit there and actually make development and changes real time. In addition to that, there were a lot of times where they said, well, geez, that's good, but I really want this to be this way. Okay, well, but I have no view of what that means. In other words, I know I've got this much time, I know I've got this much budget. If I want this to be like this, what does that mean to my time and budget? How can I base a decision on whether I want this to do that without the other pieces, without the other data points on how much is it going to cost and how long is it going to take? So what we built, or what our SI, Accenture, built within Salesforce is a tool that actually captures those requirements. I'm going to show you some screenshots of that in a minute. It captures the requirements and shows the level of effort. At any time, anybody on the business team, and this, by the way, this helped tremendously from a global perspective, but that's a whole other session I'm going to next. But it helped everybody on the business team kind of say, well, where are we at? What's actually in scope? What's being done? How much effort is this particular requirement? Well, I need that, but I don't need it that bad. I'd rather have this. And all of a sudden, the Lego pieces, the requirements, could come together however the business wanted them to. So you hear Zoe Peterson here, and she talks about this. She loved this because she could basically make well-informed decisions based on not only the IT costs and timeline, but on business value. So she could put together her solution before it was ever built so we could lock in and make sure that we were delivering crystal clear what we were delivering that would meet her expectations because she basically saw it before it went to production. So pretty powerful, simple, right? No rocket science here. People that don't know the tool are going to have a hard time defining what they want in the tool. People are going to be able to be much smarter about what they want the tool to do if they actually see it, right? And obviously, the trade-offs become a lot easier when you have those pieces of data. Great for change control, by the way. So this conference room pilot approach, the CRP approach, I love this. It's great. So one of the things that you run into, and I'm in IT, so one of my fears is, and it always happens, right, where you have scope creep or you get to the end of a project and you always get that person that says, yeah, well, geez, you didn't do it the way that I wanted to do it. Why didn't you do this? What's going on? Why, I asked for this. This requirement didn't read like that. It read like this, right? So you can document till the cows come home. But until you actually see the production instance, it's white noise, right? So there's going to be misses. I've been through that many times, and it's painful. Conference room pilot approach and the way that Salesforce is able to make very quick changes shifts that dynamic. What we would do is we would sit down and we call this the scope phase. Really, this is a requirements phase. We sit with the business and we pull up Salesforce and we say, you need to do this particular, well, let me back up. So how we organized our rollouts are around capability leads. So we had one person accountable globally for each, quote, capability lead. And those are kind of work packets. So for example, opportunity management, right? So that's a work packet. There's one person that owns opportunity management. Everybody around the globe would go to that person, define the requirements, they rationalize it, they fight it out. Maybe we have some give and takes, whatever, but that person is accountable ultimately for that particular capability, right? So for each capability, we would come into a CRP session and we would say, okay, this is the capability that you're looking to do. Here's the business process. Let me show you what Salesforce does out of the box, right? Let's start there. And let's see if that fits your needs. And if it doesn't, let's figure out why it doesn't. Because you know what? Maybe the way we're doing it today isn't the right way. Maybe the way that we're doing it today needs another look, right? So that's what we do in the scope or requirement session. We say, the capability lead comes there. Here's my business process. Here's what I'm looking to do. Well, here's Salesforce standard functionality. Will this fit? Do these pieces fit? Do they go together? Yeah, they do. Never happens, right? There's always some give and take. So there's always some customization, some tweaking you're going to need to do, inevitably. But you need to ask why, right? So one of the great things that came out of this is we found a lot of efficiencies, low-hanging fruit efficiencies, by asking the question why. Why are we doing it that way? I don't know. It's always been done that way. Okay, well, why? And when you get to the third and fourth why, sometimes it's valid, and then you build a requirement in. And then you say, okay, got it, makes sense, now that's a requirement. Requirement. Well, no, that doesn't make sense. Why don't we do it this way? Oh, yeah, I never thought of that. Or, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, requirement. Maybe we have to tweak the tool to support that, right? So At each one of these stages, and there's 3 primary stages, at the end of this stage, there's a formal sign-off. That's my get-out-of-jail-free card. Where I say to the business, look, you can go out on Salesforce, you can see all the requirements that are out there, you can see the level of effort around any of those requirements. Are we good? Because we're going to start designing this. And if you're not good, tell me now. Because I don't want to be here 6 months from now having burned a bunch of hours and having burned a bunch of time, your time and my time, and we're not good in the requirements phase. So you have those conversations throughout. But we did a formal sign-off at each step, and I think that's important. You have one owner who's accountable, and they have to say, yep, it's good. We're aligned. Then we move into the design CRP. So now we got a kind of a functional model. Now we got something we can really play with. So got the requirements. Yep, took this requirement. Yep, we need to do that. Okay, here's what it's going to look like. Now, is it fully functional? No. But you can get a pretty clear picture of what you're going to do. Again, mitigates the armchair quarterbacking, right? So mitigates that. And I'm in IT, so I'm probably saying that wrong, right? So I should say it differently. I should say it ensures that what you're delivering meets the business needs, right? So forget, the get-out-of-jail-free card and armchair quarterbacking. Really what it's doing is it's making darn sure that what the business needs, they're getting. So pretty simple but powerful methodology. Again, formal sign-off, design. Here it is. You looked at it. You saw it. You felt it. You touched it. We good? No, we're not. And we've had that many times. Ryan, who's my right arm in this, probably knows it more than anybody, because we're going through it right now, as a matter of fact. No, we're not good. We need this. That's success. That's success. If you're catching that in your requirements, or you're catching that in your design, hallelujah. You didn't build something that you're going to get a bloody nose about. You're not going to build something that's going to go to your partner community or your sales community that's not going to be of value. That's what this is for. That's what this whole design is for. We embrace that. And we embrace escalations, too, which is interesting. Because we had a lot of those, where you'd have contention. You'd have somebody that represented a certain region saying, you assign that to the capability lead. That's not the way we want to do it. Okay, how do you want to do it? Let's have that discussion now. Let's not have it after we've deployed. So those are the kind of things that kind of tend to flesh themselves out. Are they hard discussions? Yeah. Are they necessary discussions? Absolutely. And they're of extreme value. So then we get to the build CRP, where we sit there, and this is, we should be pretty close, right? So you've told us what you want. You've seen basically what it's going to look like. Now we built something based on what you told us you wanted. You've seen it. We're good up till here. Now we're going to go actually build this thing. You'd think would all be set and everybody would be happy. Never happened, right? So there's always things when you get to that build phase and you're coming out of that and you think, oh boy, we've done everything right. You're still going to have changes here. They're going to be smaller, they're going to be less impactful, and you're going to know the level of effort on those changes so that you can assess whether you can absorb them or not, or how you want to absorb them. Because at the end of the day, it's going to come down to some basic fundamental decisions. You're going to have a decision about budget or timeline. If your scope changes, it comes down to budget or timeline. So now you've got a fact-based conversation. You take all the emotion out of the debates, you take all the emotion out of the change control. Well, geez, I need this. Oh my God, the business is going to fail because of it. Okay, well here it is. Let's escalate it up the chain. This is what you need. Here's the level of effort to do it. This is what it does to the budget. This is what it does to the timeline. Do we want to hold the timeline? Do we want to throw in the budget? It's very fact-based decision. Makes things very quick and easy. So the other concept that worked pretty well is, again, this is the tool within Salesforce. And again, I'm going to show you this in a little bit more detail. But I thought this was really powerful. Basically, what we said to each of the capability leads is we said, you've got a bank account, right? So for opportunity registration, you've got $1,000 or 1,000 hours in your bank account. We've defined this number of requirements, right? Here's the level of effort around any of those. Here are your Lego pieces, right? So I'm gonna let you keep 1,000 hours worth of Lego pieces. Which pieces do you want? It's a great way to get to the right place. It's a great way, fact-based way. They can now put those together to make the right solution based on their perspective, based on business value. In fact, for each requirement, when I get to the tool that I keep talking about, we don't just say, here's the requirement, here's the level of effort. We say, what's the business value of this requirement? And it doesn't have to be a business case. I mean, it doesn't have to come back to dollars and cents all the time. We like it too. It's great when it does. It can be qualitative. That's okay. Because some things are just intuitive and make sense. But people should be able to sit around a table and go, yeah, I get it. That makes sense. So because I planned so well, a couple weeks ago I actually put our Salesforce instance behind our firewall, particularly for admins. I happen to be an admin. So I can't show you the live tool today, because I carefully plan everything. So I grabbed a couple of screenshots. So this is one tab where you'll see the requirements, and you can see we have them numbered, so people can reference them. We can put links to them in an email. We can actually send people. I can send my executives and say, here's the requirement that we're debating right now. Click on this link. They click on the link, they log into Salesforce, and they see exactly what the requirement is. They see the level of effort. They see who's asking for it. They see who's it assigned to. And they can approve it if they want, or reject it, right? So we can leverage that kind of whole governance model. So that is extremely helpful in of itself. And then, obviously you can't see this, meeting minutes and action items. We keep them in the tool, right? I mean, it's a great tool. Why not use tasks? Why not use the ability to track these things and track the progress around them? Kind of makes sense. Business drivers. This is what I was alluding to before. So have we been as hardline about this as we should be? Probably not. But we have good intentions, and at least we really try to do this, and at least we ask the question. Sometimes with the pace that we're moving under, some things are just so intuitive that if we sit in a room and we say, yeah, no, that's the way we need to go, we don't necessarily document it. Honest answer. But we still ask the question. And we do try to document at least the base case. And for change control items, you definitely want to. Issues and risks, right? Very clear. Anybody can go into this tool anytime, know what requirements they've asked for, know what action items they took out of the last meeting, know what issues they own, and when they're past due. It's right there. It's in black and white, right? Makes for very crisp project management. So those are kind of the two nuggets that I kind of wanted to share with you. I think the conference room pilot approach has tremendous value, making sure that the business and IT are very well aligned around not just the solution, but what it's going to deliver ultimately. No surprises, takes the surprises out. The other thing is using Salesforce to deploy Salesforce. I found it extremely valuable. So that's what we planned, that's what we did. That's what we learned, and that's how we made it better. Let me talk a little bit about our vision. So this is my second Salesforce deployment, and I've seen this full vision executed at my previous company. It's powerful. Think about what Salesforce does for a second. I mean, I'll give you kind of an IT view. It's a big database. It's a big database that captures every single touch point your field has with a client or your partners have with an end customer. Every single touch point. It's a big database. Well, if I'm a large company, it's hard to figure out strategically where I should go and what's going to be of value to my customer. Tap into this. Know your sales cycles. Know what the folks are saying to customers out in the field. Know what's working. Know what's not. Know what content is driving value and is of perceived value. Know what your average sales cycle is. At Avaya, we didn't know that. We didn't know how long our sales cycle was. Now we did. Well, we're getting there. Be careful. We're getting there. We're not 100% there yet. But so as you move through the sales process, well, geez, this opportunity that looks like this and talks like this should be closed by now. Why isn't it? Well, geez, I could go in and I can see all the details around what the last activities were around that account. And I can say, well, geez, it's not like that because of this. Or, geez, it looks like Fred, the account owner, hasn't called this customer in, 3 months. What's he doing? You can kind of go in and you can kind of see that. And then you can tweak it and you can catch your outliers. well, geez, they sold this one really quick. What did they do right? Or this one's been sitting around for a while. What did we do wrong? How can we make it better? So basically, to just kind of complete the circle here, we start with the corporate strategy, right? And we kind of have to start with something, right? And it might not be all that well thought out, quite frankly. It might be guesswork because you don't have the data. But you've got to start somewhere. Start with the corporate strategy. Have execution plans around that strategy within Salesforce.com. Account plans, partner plans. Have those execution plans. Execute on those. Capture the activity. Find out what people are doing. Find out how that's working. All the while, looping back and saying, we're executing the plan. Gee, should we tweak our strategy? Should we adjust the way we're going to market? Should we change something? Is there low-hanging fruit here? Constantly feeding it back into the strategy. Follow that activity, get to the funnel. Like I said, factors of success. Where are you in that? Are you above or below the average? When you are above or below, what are you doing about it? Are you understanding why? And then ultimately results. And ultimately, what this model will allow, and again, Salesforce is the centerpiece of this, is you should have a strategy based on results, and you should have results based on a strategy. You should know why you're succeeding, and you should know why you're not succeeding. And you should have control over it. Otherwise, it's just happenstance. You're just getting lucky. And just the last bullet, because Chris mentioned we came from Siebel. So Siebel was basically a funnel management tool. Our reps looked at it as an administrative task. Geez, I got to go into Siebel and put my funnel in. I got my coverage ratio. It's a nosebleed. It's a trip to the dentist, right? It was a slow tool, all that given. But it wasn't value add. They didn't see the value. They didn't see how it translated into dollars. Salesforce is different. Salesforce does translate into value. Salesforce, just look at content, being able to push content on an opportunity, or being able to automate your interactions with a customer, being able to track those and go back and check on things. All of a sudden, it's got value, right? So it translates to dollars for reps, and that's what they like more than anything, dollars. So are we here yet? No. This is our vision. The analogy that I use is we're in a race for first place. We were competing on a bike, Siebel. Sorry, Siebel. We have a Ferrari, right? We've rolled out a Ferrari, but it's only in first gear. We've only really made our funnel management tool better. So is it an easier administrative task? Is it less burdensome? Yeah, it's better. But we're not in second gear. We're not executing our plans fully. It's happening slowly. We're not tracking our activity fully the way I think it ultimately should be, the way that our management team ultimately thinks it should be. And we're not smart enough. We don't have enough data to really control our funnel yet. We really don't know those factors of success at the level where we can really act on those. And then are we feeding back all of this information, not just back to sales management, back to marketing, back to shipping, back to finance? How can we, why maybe customers aren't buying because of the financial arrangements? Maybe it's a supply chain issue, that we don't know about, right? Are we feeding those results and this data from this database on that critical touch point of where our customer and our sales force come together? Are we feeding that back into our business and making decisions in every aspect of our business based on that, based on what's of value to the customer? At the end of the day, that's all that matters. So that's our vision. And Salesforce, obviously, is a critical part of that vision. So, I'm doing all right. So in closing, conference pilot approach, both effective and efficient. So, there's kind of two levers that sometimes get confused. You can do something really efficient that's ineffective. So you do something really quick and fast that's just dumb, like the signs. Or you can do something very effective, but it's not efficient. Salesforce, and the way that we're actually able to roll this out, we can do both levers. We're able to do it efficiently and effectively. To make decisions, you need to arm teams with information. Again, this kind of gets back to the tool, conference room pilot approach, being able to make those decisions quick. Knowing what you don't know is key. Don't don't make the same assumptions. Don't think that because you've rolled out a Siebel or something that you know things and you know how things should work, because you might not. I know I've learned a ton over the last 15 months. I mean, a ton. And just something common sense, like asking people to build a tool that they've never seen. I think that's kind of key. So that's it. I mean, that's pretty much what I wanted to hit. We saved 15 minutes. I got the yellow light for questions. So what do you think? Questions? Yes, sir.
Did you factor in the integration during your conference provider, or was it just a standalone?
Yeah, you have to factor in integration. That's probably one of the harder things to do. So whenever we were in a conference room pilot and something was going to touch integration, we had to factor that in, and we had to put it in the level of effort in the tool, right? So when we get those requirements out of the conference room pilot and we look at it and we go, ooh, we're going to need to tap into SAP, or we're going to need to tap into something else. Well, that all translates to hours. That all translates to budget and timeline. And we would capture that. We would put it with the requirements so we could make decisions on whether we should include that or not. Yes.
So during your conference, did you test for the global team, or did you choose specifically?
Yeah, we did, actually. Especially for certain functionality, it had to be vetted globally. Again, we tried to keep the governance process in place, and we let people, we encouraged debate. Once a decision was made, we moved forward. Everybody kind of had to lick their wounds, and we were done. But we encouraged that debate. We wanted that healthy debate, and at some points, escalation, right, to get it right. But absolutely, we had to have a global view. We had to have the global teams represented. For the conference room pilot, it depends what phase we're in, right? So if we're in the requirements gathering phase, we're probably not going to have any data. When we're in the design phase, we might pull in a little bit of sample data. And obviously in the build phase, we're going to probably be a little bit more robust. And at the end of build, we're going to have the interfaces actually built.
Yeah, one of the things that Sean didn't cover, we didn't know if we'd have enough time, but one of the things that the approach they took, actually, they had this coexistence strategy. So they didn't actually kind of day one flip everybody from Siebel over to Salesforce. They kind of migrated PRM people over first. They left their sales organization on Siebel. We built a bridge between Salesforce and Siebel, right, and kind of moved data back and forth, and we moved people over time. So that notion of kind of that iterative approach, where if you kind of go back to that chart we had, it was kind of like, how do I get people there over time? So data was definitely a big factor as part of that. In the back?
So what kind of visibility did you give the business side to the project management tools and build things?
Full visibility. Full visibility, absolutely, transparent. It comes back to trust. If they don't trust us, we have to open the kimono. Everything we see, they see. We got to be one team and make decisions.
Other advantages of using that and basically learn the systems, I assume at that point they weren't doing anything in the system otherwise. And then any disadvantages that came up?
Yeah, perceived disadvantages, right? So you get a lot of people. So tell the business owner that the business owner who's accountable for a piece of functionality that now they can go in and inspect on it every 5 minutes, right? There's good things and bad things that come with that, right? So and that comes down to sometimes an individual personality thing where you kind of have to kind of deal with that. But at the end of the day, my point of view, the reason why conference room pilot approach is successful, the reason why the tool is successful is because it's one team and it's about trust. And if they don't trust the deployment team and we don't trust the business team, we're one team. And they have to see everything we see, we have to see everything that they're looking at. And we have to jointly come up with one solution, ultimately for Avaya. I got to tell you, in patches, but by and large, no, they were chomping at the bit. People love too much sometimes. I mean, they were all over it. In fact, oftentimes if we didn't update it right away, we'd get these, emails. What's going on? I thought I captured my requirements. Why aren't they in the tool? All right. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So we did adopt, so we have a pretty regimented governance process. So once we went live, actually the lead for that's here. His name's Don Wesson. Oh, there he is, yeah. So Don leads the team that takes in all the requirements. So whenever we have a bug or anything comes to tier 3 support, right, we capture it, we build a case around it, and then we have a governance forum where we meet twice a week, and we say, here are the things that came in, right? Is this something that we really need to do? What's the level of effort? Again, what's the level of effort around it? Is this something that we should put to a major release, a minor release, or a maintenance release? Or maybe it's just deferred, right? So we just we go through the list of all those cases and all those things in a very fact-based way, and we make decisions on where to slot those. And then originally, after our first release, we were doing weekly maintenance releases. So, yeah, Don used to have a full set of hair before the weekly maintenance releases. Yes.
I was wondering, what was the average duration for the scope CRPs? And did you time box them, or did it depend on the complexity of the capability? How did you manage that?
It depended on the complexity of the capability. We had to time box them, so sometimes we had to force people to make decisions, hard decisions. And there might not be a crisp black and white answer on some of these. I mean, that's just the reality of the day. So you make the decision, and it's you give a date, and you have to hold that date, or there's an escalation. So the minute you kind of fall out, then you say, okay, what's the issue? Here are the facts. How do we make this decision? Do we go A or B or whatever the decision is? But it will vary based on capability. So, for example, in the release we're working on now, we have back-end credits, very custom, right? Nobody's really figured out the right model for that. Many hours have been spent on that, right? Many hours, not just from a Salesforce perspective, from an overall process and how do we want to do it, right? So compare that with Salesforce mobility. So we had CRPs around that. Pretty easy. So, yes, sir. So it's changed over time, actually. So originally we had a periodic publication that we would send out to users. We did training and all that sort of stuff. Right now we have what we call CRM admin mailbox that they send it to. And to Chris's point, that goes to the business. That doesn't go to IT. So the business folks can actually, and we've got a very crisp set of here's what the business can do, and here's where it falls off, and here's where it needs to go to IT. So they kind of handle that, and then we actually do use the home page all the time. If I were to log in, I guarantee there's an announcement out there now. But with all the other initiatives that we got going on, all the planes in the air, so to speak, that I mentioned before, we feel like our reps are getting and our partners are getting bombarded with information. So we're trying to really kind of skinny it down and make sure that we're very succinct in it. So there's actually a person that leads the change control that kind of makes that call with the input of the capability leads. And to be honest, IT doesn't have a big say in that, right? So they know the teams, and it's a judgment call. I don't think there's any silver bullet there. Yes, sir.
You did not mention a process phase before the business requirements. How did you ensure the business requirement consistency with the business objectives?
You're right. You're right. So we didn't. So we started. Oftentimes we started with whatever the business could put together by way of a process and requirement. So we tried to document. In a very simple way, what we did is we said we need to make sure you need to come into these sessions, document it at some level, and sometimes they didn't do it, which our partner actually helped with, fortunately. We need to know what it is today, and we need to know what you want it to be like, and then we spent the session talking about how to get from A to B.
In fact, my question is that we started also with more or less at the same kind of style of deployment. We started also with this kind of approach, doing things and showing things, and now we are in phase 2 or 3, where we explain how to, but not why. Why is in the process. So at the starting point, it's good to do it because the deliver and the business shows exactly the message that your colleagues in business say. But at a certain point of time, you need to know why
So what's interesting is at least from my experience sitting in some of these CRPs, the minute we actually documented what we were doing, the whys came out very loud and clear. A lot of them came out very loud and clear. The minute you actually walk through, this happens in this box, then it goes here, and you actually walk through the full process, there were a lot of times where we'd say, time out, why are we doing that? Why does it go like that? Why don't we just have it go here? Many times. So again, what the conference room pilot approach was able to deliver was not just a better tool, but a better process. Yes, sir. It did. So we do have some services folks on the application now. Avaya is kind of we're still a little bit siloed in that. Honest answer. So we're still working on exactly. When we get to kind of at the high level, it's easy, right? Kind of the basic stuff, it was relatively easy. When we start to get into things like, how do we do configuration and how do we align with the services piece if they've got a separate profit center and they're managing their numbers, we're still working through that. They're tough. So again, what we do is we make sure that our senior management's aligned with the capability leads and they own it. And if they can't, if we've got services and sales with two different perspectives and they're going to the capability lead and the capability lead's going, I'm not sure what to do here, or hey, I agree with them and this person says no, I'm adamant. Escalate. That's okay. As long as you do it fact-based, unemotional. Here's why we're escalating. Here are the impacts. What do we want to do as a company? Yeah, you have to. In my opinion, the model breaks down pretty quick if you don't. Yes, sir. Right. That's all right. Got it. So if you've got the facts, right, it's a math problem. You go to the leader of the business and you say, here's what it's going to take to do it. Here's what we're hearing as a business value. Do you want to fund it? All right, then we'll do it. Here's the business value. Here's what it's going to do to the timeline. Do you want to delay? When you have the tool like was built in here and like Accenture put together, it just makes decisions much crisper, and you know the implications. So it basically comes down to somebody on the business side, if they really want something bad enough and they're willing to pay for it or slip the schedule, have it. If it's the right thing for the company, maybe we should do it. So yeah, there were those times.
So we'll do one. Just we're almost out of time. So we'll do one more, and then I'm sure Sean will be available to kind of do it offline. So we'll go there.
Sure. So, geez, that's a good question. I think it was probably a mixed answer. I think there was business value and efficiency, and Avaya. Just to give you a little bit of history, Avaya was purchased by two private equity firms that brought in a pretty sharp management team, and they realized pretty quick that we didn't have a good view on how we were going to market, and our strategy wasn't based on data. So that vision that I went through was core and is core. So that's a business driver. From an efficiency perspective, there's dramatic efficiencies. I mean, software as a service on the whole, I mean, you kind of go back to that core model. So I would probably say it's twofold. I don't think there was one over the other. And I forget your... It's varied. So depending on which release you're talking about, I don't know, Ryan, how many people do we have on release 1, would you say? Yeah. Yeah. first one was hard. You know, you look just like a capability lead at Avaya. You look like the guy that leads our reporting capability. You're a little bit more handsome. Any other questions?
We'll take this offline.
I think we're good.
Our little red light has come on.
Oh,
so, Sean,
geez.
thank you very much. There's a survey online. Thanks, everybody, for attending.